Pickering says the lack of approval won't hold her back. She can still use it on the branding, but not able to register the name. It means that she can't use the name to incorporate her business, so no name or asset protection. She reckons the company's office needs to lighten up. Andrew, happy to sit on your face. What do you think?
It's an opening
don't know
gambit.
if it's probably the style I'd be buying, but yeah,
no.
I can't see why they're worrying about that. Yeah, fine by me.
I agree entirely, and they're very stylish. But this is excellent publicity for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done.
I'm gonna come out and I say I don't really like the name personally.
Well, then don't buy them.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
There's other products called G-Spot. There's all sorts of stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
but I've got to walk into a sunglasses shop and happy to sit on your face.
So what?
It's
is it not art, Wallace? Is that what the problem is?
Well,
If you don't like the name, walk past and go to the name you do like.
Yeah.
It's tacky, isn't it?
Yeah,
Penny?
but you're not in the company's offices in charge of taste. They're in charge of names that are going to offend people, and no one's going to like. And if someone's really offended by that, text in on 2101 and tell us how offended you are by it.
And if someone comes up with a stupid, tacky name that people are going to be offended by, then they won't buy their product and they'll go out of business.
Yeah, and I think it's quite funny
Pretty
anyway.
simple.
They're really stylish. And they were quite cheap, $40.
Oh, is that all?
Very happy to have them sit on my face for that.
Well, yeah. Okay. But in terms of, the New Zealand Company's office said add the name sunglasses to the end of happy to sit on your face sunglasses, and then they'll register it.
Oh.
What do you reckon, Andrew?
They said that.
I think it's just been a bit pedantic.
I mean, if it is, but if you can do that, and then you can just leave that word off when you put them on the sunglasses. I mean, if that's a reach around, then I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I suppose, too, there are other names, aren't there, like FC UK,
Exactly.
the French brand that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, G-Spot.
Hasn't it? And is that a hairdresser's place, is it?
Apparently, yeah, there was something online about that.
Yeah.
I'm just making that up.
Very, very good indeed. All right, we've cleared that up. Someone says here, sunglasses, very, very offended. There you go.
Oh, okay. Thanks for texting in on 2101.
Now, just to cap it off briefly, it looks like sharing burned CDs with your mates is a thing of the past. About half of the 1,000 people who took part in a study into pirating had ripped off TV and film content at some point, but only 10% of those who took part in the research still pirate today. I found this, Penny, quite extraordinary that the piracy has just plummeted.
I don't find it extraordinary at all.
Why? Why not?
Well, for example, I have been, because I'm quite a fan of the costume drama, bonnet drama. It's sort of my meat and potatoes these days, do a lot of that sort of thing. And I was trying to get, a Dickens one that was such a great one, and I couldn't get it. In the end, I just streamed it. I tried to buy it on iTunes. I tried to buy it on Amazon. I couldn't get it anywhere, and then I went, I tried everything. I'm going to stream it. So I tried, but I couldn't do it. So, and I think there's a thing. Now there's all these different ways of us to actually watch things legally for a very reasonable cost.
I never thought about it, because recall, Andrew, the big ads, piracy and all that sort of thing. I mean, when was the last time, Andrew, that you viewed pirated material?
Would have been about 5 or 6 years ago. That's when I stopped. When, I guess, Netflix and all the other things sort of came out, and suddenly it became easy to get all these TV programs I wanted to watch.
What did you illegally download?
Oh, Battlestar Galactica, various sci-fi programs that TVNZ and TV3 aren't interested in, but were on in the States. That was
massive.
Yeah, that's stuff I liked. So it wasn't available, so screw you, I'll download it.
Okay.
Also, they've cottoned on to, Game of Thrones is at exactly the same time as America. So now they do things direct, like Grey's Anatomy, which I still watch, as exactly at the same time as America. So that solves the piracy as well.
Here you go. Here's a voice of reason. Final text. Surely, sit on your nose. Sunglasses. That is the best.
Some more exciting.
Sit on your
thing
nose.
to do as
Penny
well.
Ashton, Andrew Hogarth, thank you very much.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. On tonight's program, it's deja vu for some Nelson residents after a new fire has them scrambling to get out of their houses again, just hours after the official civil defence emergency lifts. Helicopters with monsoon buckets are battling the blaze near Redwood Valley. Police are going door to door. We'll have the latest. An e-scooter rider catapulted off his Lime says he told the company about the braking fault 4 months ago. Former Labour MP and Minister John Tamahere is threatening legal action after the party rejects his membership bid. And Hollywood star Hugh Jackman jumps out of the wings to surprise South Auckland students.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leia tawa tēnei. People in Redwood Valley near Nelson are once again being asked to leave their homes after another fire broke out this afternoon in the Tinder Dry region. The fire has doubled in the past few hours from 3 to 7 hectares and is still not under control. People on the Moutere Highway are being asked to evacuate. Dave Woon from Fire and Emergency says the fire is about 700 metres off the Moutere Highway in exotic pines and grass. He says resources are being pulled off the Pigeon Valley fire, which he said has now largely been extinguished. 16 fire trucks and 3 helicopters are working to contain the fire. There is virtually no rain forecast for the area in the next 5 days. Nelson is currently on track to have its driest January and February on record. A Redwood Valley resident says he choked up when he was told he would be evacuated again days after getting the all clear to return after the Tasman fires. Dermot Brazendale and his family, dogs and ponies are leaving for the second time.
I guess when we got back, we did feel, a sense of great pleasure at being back in our home. And despite, our land was pretty ravaged and there's no trees and there's no grass. And so it was we were at that point where we were cleaning our house and trying to take stock of where we go next. We were in that kind of recovery stage, but we're in a pretty arid, dry spell at the moment. So it was always a chance.
Dermot Brazendale. The police say members of the public who filmed a shootout with an armed offender were lucky not to be injured. A man is in a serious but stable condition in Christchurch Hospital following the armed confrontation last night. The man shot at police after being forced to stop following a pursuit and was injured when police returned fire. The Canterbury District Commander Superintendent John Price says the incident would have been very alarming for residents in the Richmond Street area.
So in circumstances like that, I appreciate that people have taken the opportunity to film or take photographs, but we are very, very lucky that no other members of the public were hurt in this incident.
John Price says they believe the injured man is involved in an earlier incident on Saturday when shots were fired at police, and he is likely to face a number of serious charges. Winston Peters has called the former Prime Minister Jenny Shipley incompetent in the wake of yesterday's High Court judgment that makes her liable for $6 million. The High Court found that Dame Jenny and others breached their duty as Mainzeal directors in allowing the company to trade recklessly before it collapsed in 2013. RNZ understands senior cabinet ministers have already discussed whether she can remain an executive director of the New Zealand-China Council. The Foreign Minister told reporters in Fiji he'd been talking about Dame Jenny's incompetence for years.
I've been telling you since the Wine Box inquiry and the BNZ scandal about this person's incompetence and the incompetence of a number of National Party people to actually understand business or to represent our country properly.
Winston Peters. Dame Jenny hasn't responded to requests for comment. No more Queensland fruit flies have been found since the first unwanted import was discovered in Auckland about 2 weeks ago. The Biosecurity Minister Damien O'Connor says restrictions on the movement of fresh produce in and out of contaminated zones will be lifted from this Saturday if no further flies are found. He says 5 Queensland fruit flies in total have been found, and the Ministry of Primary Industries has inspected 300 tonnes of fruit collected from the contaminated zones, all of which are free from larvae. Devonport will be the first to have restrictions lifted this Saturday, followed by Otara on March the 8th and Northcote on March 10th. The man famous for his work with the colossal squid at Te Papa has asked the museum to remove any reference to him in protest of potential redundancies. Squid expert Steve O'Shea says he no longer wants to be associated with Te Papa, having been involved with it for more than 40 years. Dr O'Shea says the museum doesn't respect its staff or its collections.
The persons that have been responsible for developing these collections, for looking after these collections, for researching these collections, and I'm talking world experts, they're being made redundant. And I simply do not understand why a museum would make redundant the intellectual genius that they currently are.
Steve O'Shea's concerns come as 30 international scientists signed a letter sent to Te Papa expressing their growing concern over the restructure. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 5. The former US Open winner Michael Campbell admits to a few nerves ahead of his first competitive round in 6 years at the New Zealand Golf Open in Queenstown tomorrow. The 50-year-old Campbell, who pipped Tiger Woods by 2 shots at the US Open at Pinehurst in 2005, is coming out of retirement as he targets the Seniors Tour. It's 10 years since Campbell last played in the National Open, having won the event in 2000.
It's more of excitement nervous rather than nervous. It's healthy to get nervous on the first tee. I've been really into the whole science of it now. Before I was more of a feel player. Now I'm combining the science with my feel. The game has evolved, and if you don't go with it, you're going to be left behind.
Michael Campbell. Meanwhile, Sir Bob Charles may be 82, but he's still got what it takes off the tee in a par 3 warm-up tournament to the New Zealand Open. Sir Bob made a hole-in-one on the final hole. The Hurricanes have called up their All Black cavalry following their humbling at the hands of the Crusaders in their last Super Rugby outing. There are 7 changes to the starting 15 from the 38-22 loss in Christchurch for Friday night's match against the ACT Brumbies in Palmerston North. All Blacks first 5 Beauden Barrett will play his first match of the season, while halfback TJ Perenaro returns to the starting lineup. All Blacks loose forward Adi Savea is also back, but will start at number 8, while fellow international Nani Laumape returns to the midfield. Fellow All Black Vaea Fifita will start at blindside flanker, while All Blacks fullback Geordie Barrett has been rested altogether. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Simon Morris reigns on the Oscars parade, or maybe he just ignores it. Our window on the world looks at how Germans view Britain. I wonder if anyone will mention the war. And we celebrate the antidote to NIMBYs, YIMBYism, the movement that says yes to building something in that metaphorical backyard. Or is that just somebody else's metaphorical backyard? So many questions on Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Met service weather to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Waikato, mainly fine. Isolated showers tomorrow morning. Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine weather. Waitomo, Taumaranui and Taihape, mainly fine. Isolated showers overnight tonight. Taranaki to Kapiti, cloudy periods with isolated light showers becoming fine tomorrow morning. Wellington and Wairarapa, cloudy periods. A few showers developing overnight tonight, then becoming fine during the afternoon or during tomorrow morning. Marlborough and Nelson, high cloud increasing. A few showers about western Nelson and the Kaikoura coast this evening. Fine tomorrow. Westland and Bulla, rain in Westland spreading north this afternoon. Heavy for a time with thunderstorms possible, then easing this evening. Fine tomorrow. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, also Fiordland. Showers with hail and isolated thunderstorms are possible, easing tonight. Showers becoming confined to the south coast tomorrow morning and becoming fine elsewhere. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, periods of rain tomorrow. It's 8 minutes past 5 and you're with RNZ National.
Thanks, Susanna. And this is Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen. Just hours after the civil defence emergency lifted in Tasman district, some residents are on the move again after a new fire broke out in the Redwood Valley area. Some residents say they noticed the smell first and then plumes of smoke early this afternoon. Helicopters with monsoon buckets are overhead and crews have been diverted from dampening down the Pigeon Valley fire. The blaze is now covering 7 hectares. This afternoon, Checkpoint spoke to a number of residents in the area, some as they were repacking their bags.
We were just sitting finishing lunch and I could see smoke across the valley and then I could smell it and I thought, oh, am I imagining it? But no. And then I went across the paddock to have a look and there certainly a lot, and then the helicopter started coming over.
I can see smoke billowing up in probably, I think there's about 4 choppers, but we can't actually see down into the valley. But you see big puffs come up every so often, so obviously that's trees going up.
My husband phoned me a short while ago and said, have you heard about the fire? He's down the road and obviously was following it, and told me about the evacuations. It was just the wind that's very concerning.
Getting ready to evacuate, just in case, but our niece across the road, just across the paddock there, has been evacuated and there's a lot of smoke.
With the last big fire, the helicopters with the monsoon buckets dropping water and probably flame retardants as well. So there are several helicopters in the air right now.
There's some new subdivisions and there's some farmland and there's some scrub area and there's some pine plantation. So, yeah, a real mix. Yeah, well, this is in a different spot. It's outside the that fire zone.
Who's there with you at the moment?
I've got my cousin and my dad. My dad's 94 and I've got the wheelchair ready and I was just going to pack some of his clothes into a bag. And we've got the photographs and things all ready to go.
Did you have your precious things already tidied away just in case after the big fire?
Yes, well we thought that we might have needed to evacuate then.
This time it's a bit closer to us, so yeah, it makes us a bit nervous, that's for sure.
The police have been up that way.
So what have they been doing?
They've been knocking on all the doors up the Mootry Hill and evacuating everybody.
Does it make you a bit nervy, Tricia?
Yes, especially as the family is here. There's 4 children and our daughter and son-in-law.
Especially if we get a wind change, that could be an issue. But certainly be on the edge. And obviously, after the first few days of getting home, we're pretty tired.
I've got a water tanker, which I've just brought home from Motueka. I've got a full load on board, and I'll just see what happens, whether I get called up to help with that.
I really feel so sorry for the people in the Redwood area. Yeah, the Redwood Valley area.
So tell me...
I'm outside and it's still quite gusty, which is, yes, it's a big concern with the hot spots and the fire moving really fast.
So that were some of the residents who are near or could see that fire in the Redwood Valley area. Now, Fire Incident Controller Robin Thompson joins us now live from the Tasman District. Hi, Robin. How are things going there for you?
A lot better than a couple of hours ago, and hopefully the residents are feeling a bit better too, even though most of them have been evacuated. So the fire's basically contained now. We estimate a total of 5 hectares. It commenced on the highway, the Mootry Highway, which is our inland highway, and just went downhill through sort of 18-year-old pines and gorse, and the wind sort of drove it downhill, just the westerly wind we had today, which we knew was a bad fire day, and took it out onto the grass below the pines, and fortunately the helicopters were able to pull it up there, and we're still containing it in the pine block, but it's isolated to the pine block and not really going to get out of there. So we're much happier now.
How bad's the weather? Because a number of the residents mentioned the winds. How much of a problem is that posing for you at the moment?
Yeah, when the fire started, it was quite gusty. It's a sort of gusting to 25 k's an hour with our southwest wind, and Nelson, our southwest wind, is our very low humidity wind. The humidity was down to 24%, and that basically drove the fire down the slopes and out onto the grass.
So how much have you had to throw at it? How many choppers are there? Crews?
Yes, we had additional resources ready in the area, and also took some resources from the main fire, which we could. So we had 5 helicopters onto it pretty quick, 2 heavy machines. We had 16 appliances and tankers there initially, and crews from the other fire and our volunteers to return out. So yeah, we got onto it pretty quick, which was good, and managed to pull it up.
Robin, do you know how this has started? Is it part of the old fire? Is it totally new, or what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's totally new. It's probably 2 or 3 kilometres away from the old fire. It did start on the public highway edge. Unknown source of the stage, but we have an investigator on it. Is that kind of suspicious? Looking into that.
Bit suspicious, do you think?
Potentially, but I won't speculate yet. All sorts of fires can happen on roadsides, especially when things are as dry as they are here now.
I understand there's a couple of significant businesses in that area. What else is there, and how close are they to what's burning?
Yes, there's a couple of businesses. They're a kilometre or so away, but the police did a great job doing evacuations pretty pronto for us, and a total of 81 houses were evacuated, and those people are being housed in Richmond at the moment. And the police did a great job of closing down the Mootry Highway for us, so we could stage incoming vehicles on the highway there.
So when you say the area that you've now think you've got under control, where does it spread? Can you give us some borders so that locals will know exactly where we're talking about?
Right, the location of the fire, if you're going up the Moosery Hill from the Redwoods Valley Highway, it's the first pine block on the left. So it commenced in there, but it was coming back downhill, if you like, downhill through that first patch of pines. And it just got out into the grass. It threatened to run on the grass because our grass is so dry here, and in the wind it will spread. But the fire helicopters pulled it up there, good, which was a very good job they did. And it's just working systematically through the bit of the fire that's still in the pine forest there, and making sure that can't spread any further.
So what happens now? Do you stay there overnight?
Yes, we'll have two or three crews on it overnight to keep right on top of things there. And as of 10 o'clock tonight, we'll basically make it another sector of main fire, so it's all run under one command system. But we had pre-planned for this sort of thing. We'd run them as a separate fire initially, which we did. And 10 o'clock tonight's their time to just make it a sector of the main fire and bring it under that management.
Hey, Robin, you guys must feel like you're getting a flogging at the moment.
It does feel a wee bit like that, but the forestry crews and the volunteer urban and rural crews are doing a great job. They just got into action and out there pretty quick, so it was great.
So the residents, as you said, a number of houses had to be cleared out. Any idea when they might be able to be back? Will they be out overnight?
Certainly, I hope they won't be out overnight. We're not under the sort of fence evacuation at the moment. The sort of fence declaration expired this morning, so we'll just do some assessments with the police in the next few hours and see when we're happy to get them back in there.
OK, so stay tuned for the residents. Thank you so much. That's Robin Thompson, who's the fire incident controller there, and he's talking about a new fire that's broken out in the Tasman district in the Redwood Valley area. And some residents who had previously been evacuated, well, they're out of their houses again. They hope to know in the next couple of hours when they might be able to return. The man who sparked a shootout with police in Christchurch last night was on the run after allegedly firing at officers on 2 previous occasions. The 33-year-old Woolston man, who the police are not naming, is under guard in hospital in a serious but stable condition after the police returned fire, injuring him in his lower body. Conan Young filed this report.
A man who's asked not to be named says he was standing in his kitchen when the shooter's car came to a stop just 20 metres from his first floor apartment.
Well, I heard a car going flat out and screeching, and then it slammed to a halt, and then a guy pulled out a big rifle and pulled it over the window and was shooting at the police.
Fearing a stray bullet might enter his kitchen window, he took shelter under his kitchen bench.
Because I didn't know what this guy was doing or whether he'd just gone bizarre or something, and I didn't know, so...
Pretty frightening.
Oh, I was terrified. Yeah, I've never experienced something like this before.
He says the police didn't have any choice but to return fire in the way they did.
To let that guy go with a rifle in an area like with families and young kids and everything around, there's people around on cycles and people walking dogs, he was not in a very good state of mind, and he might have panicked and shot someone else.
Tanya Gates and partner Paul Bensley heard the shooter's car tear around the corner and into their street after hitting road spikes and shearing off one of his front tyres, part of which landed in front of their home.
Just lights, there were just sirens and lights everywhere. Then we started to, as we sort of went out to the back gate, that's when there was the shooting and things were already well and truly happening. Split second of sort of 10 seconds, really. She was all on.
As they moved out onto the street, they saw the police had things under control.
I seen the guy lying on the ground straight after.
But he got up.
They stood him up, and I think they patted him down and then laid him down again because he was shot. So.
The shots were heard right around the neighbourhood, including by Kelly Scott.
To let that guy go with a rifle in an area like with families and young kids and everything around, there's people around on cycles and people walking dogs, he was not in a very good state of mind, and he might have panicked and shot someone else.
Canterbury District Commander Superintendent John Price says the same man fired at police when they tried to pull him over 4 days ago when he was seen driving erratically. They abandoned pursuit, but a short time later the man shot at a stationary police car in another part of the city. Last night, a police chase ensued after he failed to stop once more. John Price says he drove at an officer laying road spikes and then fired at police with a shotgun once his car came to a stop.
We're very lucky that I'm speaking to you here that no police officer has sustained major physical injuries. But this pays a toll on our staff when they have to use lethal force to try and bring someone to justice.
John Price paid tribute to the actions of the 5 officers who were first on the scene. They returned fire using Bushmaster rifles and Glock pistols, noting there were a number of bullet holes in the front of one of their patrol cars. He was not able to say at this stage how many shots were fired by the shooter and his officers.
We have a primary investigation that we have a team of about 30 detectives currently working on that. That investigation then provides the foundation for the IPCA independent investigation, so the Independent Police Complaints Authority.
John Price says they haven't been able to speak to the shooter, who remains in a serious but stable condition. Ke o te tahi ahau mo te hotaka o te ahi nei, ko Konanyang tēnei.
It's 21 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. We're always keen to hear from you, so you can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. If you've got eyes on that Redwood Valley fire, do keep us posted if you see any movement there. The former Labour MP John Tamahere has threatened to appeal the party's refusal to renew his membership. Mr Tamahere has been a member of the Labour Party on and off for nearly 50 years and believes the rejection is aimed at undermining his bid for the Auckland mayoralty. Here's our political reporter, John Gerritsen.
John Tamahere's father reportedly signed him up for his first Labour Party membership when he was 8. But now it seems the party doesn't want the 60-year-old. Mr Tamahere says he doesn't know why, but he believes it's because he's contesting the Auckland mayoralty, and Labour has endorsed the incumbent, former Cabinet Minister Phil Goff, who's expected to run again. That fits the party's constitution. It specifically forbids members from running or campaigning against candidates it's endorsed. But Mr Tamahere says the rule doesn't apply in this case.
You can't endorse a guy who has yet to determine whether he wants to be a candidate. That's endorsing an apparition. So Goff hasn't determined that he's got an appetite to run for mayor.
But then there's Mr Tamahere's checkered history. In 2005, the then Labour MP made derogatory comments about women and gay people, prompting Prime Minister Helen Clark to suggest he got a new job. In 2013, he was condemned for victim blaming when he interviewed a woman about the Roastbusters sexual assault scandal. He says neither matter is relevant now.
You either get denied membership at the time of those matters or you don't, right? Neither of those two counted against me in terms of renewal of membership. If you recall, Clark and Cullen came out of our caucus on the first issue that you raised and indicated that the party is a forgiving party.
John Tamahere has partnered with a former National Party MP, Christine Fletcher, for his run at the Auckland mayoralty, but he says that's none of the Labour Party's business. Instead, it should be looking at his policies. Rudy Taylor from Labour's Māori Council, Te Kaunihera Māori, says the party's ruling council should have given Mr Tamahere a second chance.
The decision for the party is to determine which is the members that should be or given a second chance. And I thought he should be given a second chance. And if you're talking about natural justice, I mean, bring the guy in so that he can spell it out to us what it is.
Rudy Taylor says the council should have considered Mr Tamahere's past contributions to Labour.
We should have taken on board what he's given to the Labour Party. You know, you can talk about anyone in the government representing Labour could make all different notes. But John wanted to be a member only so he can get the support if he's entitled to have that support with the council. But the council had decided to go with Phil Goff.
The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has refused to comment.
That's ultimately a question for New Zealand Council. It's not something I'm involved with at all. They're the ones that consider applications to rejoin the party, and that's what they've done here, but it's not something I've been involved with.
What's your personal view?
Again, it's not something I'm not in the habit of commenting on individuals' applications to rejoin the Labour Party. It's a matter for the Council.
Mr Tamahere has not yet decided whether he will appeal his rejection, but he says if push comes to shove, he'd rather be Mayor of Auckland than a member of the Labour Party. atu I te whare paramata mo te hōtaka o te ahi ko John Gerritson aho.
An Auckland man who was flung from his Lime scooter while travelling down Queen Street last October says it took 4 months for him to get a response from the company about the glitch. The Lime e-scooters have been pulled from the streets in Auckland and Dunedin while the City Councils wait for proof the fault has been properly resolved. Lime says it has received 155 reports of random braking. Some of those have resulted in broken bones, massive grazes and bruises. For the past 3 weeks, Checkpoint has tried repeatedly to speak to Lime about these issues, but our interview requests, phone calls and emails have gone mostly unanswered or they've been declined. Lime claims it's been in touch with riders sent flying by scooter glitches, but our reporter Nita Blake-Pearson wanted to check in with some of them to see if that was actually the case.
Jesse McBride was one of the first people to hop on a Lime scooter when they rolled out in Auckland. He was also one of the first to be sent flying, not once but twice on the same ride.
And the whole thing stopped again, jammed up or brakes locked or whatever it was, but the whole thing stopped at about 20 odd K, and the exact same thing happened again, went flying forward, landed on the palms. So then I was absolutely nailed.
The 34-year-old teacher contacted Lime that night.
So that was 24th of October, and I got a call on last Sunday, so what was that, Sunday, February 24th, that's when they got back to me on that 24th of October or whatever.
4 months later, he finally received this message.
I wanted to first find out that you're okay, but secondly, I wanted to find out a little bit more information. If you could give me a call back, my number is 213.
Mr McBride says he hasn't been able to get hold of Lime on the US number they left, and they haven't called him back. He says the total lack of communication or accountability from Lime is a major issue.
There was no way for me to stop someone else getting on that scooter and at the exact same thing happening to them. So, I mean, I was back at my house, picking out bits of gravel out of my hands, and someone else probably, it might have happened to them as well. I don't know. There was no way of me, barring throwing the thing off a cliff or something, there wasn't actually any way of me stopping someone else getting on that Lime scooter.
One Lime rider who has managed to hear from Lime is Liam Thompson. The North Shore man was flung over the handlebars of a scooter when it braked, fracturing his jaw.
Well, since the injury, I think it was about 5 days after the initial injury where I was contacted through Lime, and that was only because I was contacting every number I possibly could find to get an explanation. And, I've been talking to a lady there every now and again about what's going on.
Mr Thompson had surgery yesterday to put screws into his jaw, but doctors have told him it'll never be the same.
It's going to take about 8 weeks of this for it to heal. And there's just enough room for a straw so I can, sip my soups. Probably one of the most painful experiences I've had in my life.
He's holding out hope Lime will do the right thing by the riders that have been injured by the glitch, but says he knows he's lucky to have heard from them at all.
They haven't been upfront. I've heard that they've been in contact straight away with a lot of people, which they haven't, and that's lying to the communities, and it's unfair. But luckily with me, they have been.
At least one other Lime rider injured by the glitch says he didn't hear from Lime for 3 days before getting a generic email about the incident, which has left him with a serious knee injury. Once again, Lime refused to be interviewed for this story. For Checkpoint, Nita Blake-Pearson.
On Checkpoint on RNZ National, Auckland Transport wants to put the brakes on motorist speeds, and the sister of one of the Kiwi passengers on board MH370 speaks out nearly 5 years after the plane mysteriously disappeared. And we'll update you on that fire in the Tasman. That's the new fire in the Redwood Valley. Residents have been evacuated from the area. They won't know for a couple of hours if they're allowed back this evening. Don't forget, you can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us, Checkpoint, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. But first, actually, let's go to Redwood fires, as we said. We'll update you on that. The fire which broke out in Nelson's Redwood Valley today has doubled in size this afternoon. The blaze now covers an area of 5 hectares. An emergency and fire says the quick actions of firefighters have helped to bring a blaze in Redwood Valley under control. So we'll bring more to you on that when we get the opportunity. But now Auckland Transport wants motorists to put people's lives first when they consider new plans to cut speed limits across 10% of the city's roads. Public consultation begins tomorrow on plans to cut the speed limit to 30 kilometres an hour in the CBD and some town centres and reduce it to 60 kilometres on some rural roads. But as Jessie Chang reports, not everybody is on board with that.
Some Aucklanders, it seems, feel the need for speed. They're not happy about plans to cut speed limits to as low as 30 kilometres an hour on more than 700 kilometres of the region's roads.
No, too slow. It causes a lot of traffic, a lot of confusion. Yeah, there's no flow with 30k.
I think 50's already quite slow and people should use their own judgment to be able to know how slow they should go around people and bikes and things like that. I don't think we should be told by the government that we need to drive even slower. I already think 50's slow.
While others are torn.
People are coming off the motorway at Nelson Street, flying straight down there. There's one crossing at the top. It's just so dangerous. So part of me is like, 30k, great idea. The other part of me is like, since I live there, 30k is pretty slow. That's the speed of a Lime scooter, right?
The Auckland CBD and parts of the Otahuhu main town centre are just some of the areas Auckland Transport wants to limit vehicles to 30 kilometres per hour. About 90% of the speed reductions will be in Auckland's rural areas, with some 100-kilometre roads going down to 60. In Pukekohe, south of Auckland, locals were divided.
I'm concerned, but I don't think it's going to stop accidents.
I think it's good, and the reason why is because I've had a friend that's actually nearly died in a car crash.
Doesn't go far enough in some respects because some of the rural schools need to be re-looked at.
Hundreds of streets are on the list. Auckland Transport Chief Executive Shane Ellison says that's because research shows that cutting speed saves lives.
Our analysis and modelling shows that impact will be negligible. And in fact, we encourage people to ask themselves the question, is a small additional amount in travel time really that much to tolerate in terms of saving people's lives?
Auckland Transport Chair Lester Levy says motorists need to take responsibility.
We cannot let complacency trump safety. We have to work to get people to understand that nobody should be going out on our roads and getting killed or seriously injured. It doesn't have to happen.
But the AA says the proposal goes too far and will frustrate drivers. Its spokesperson Barney Irvine says a recent survey of 14,000 Auckland members showed only 16% favour a 30-kilometre limit in the central city. It's calling instead for a 40-kilometre limit, which Mr Irvine says is in line with the Transport Agency's recommendations and the current speed limit along Ponsonby Road.
There are different views on this, but certainly the most up-to-date, credible research we've seen suggests that a 40k limit would achieve the right safety outcomes. And we think that our members and the public would certainly be more comfortable with that than they would be with 30k's.
But that's still too fast for Auckland Transport. It's giving Aucklanders until the end of March to provide feedback on its plan, which, if adopted, would come into force in August at a cost of $24 million. I Tamaki Makaurau, mō te hōtaka o te ahi nei, ko Jessie Chang ahau.
And let's go to the headlines now with Susanna.
To the Nelson fire, and Incident Controller Robin Thompson told Checkpoint the westerly wind drove the fire through 18-year-old exotic pine trees where it's been contained. He says the blaze was first reported at about 1:15 and grew rapidly, but crews have worked quickly to show its momentum. He says residents may not have to stay out of their homes overnight. The police say a shootout with an armed offender would have been very scary for residents in the Richmond Street area where the incident took took place. Superintendent John Price says those who filmed the incident were lucky not to be injured. A man is in a serious but stable condition in Christchurch Hospital after last night's confrontation. Winston Peters has called the former Prime Minister Jenny Shipley incompetent in the wake of yesterday's High Court judgment that makes her liable for $6 million. The High Court found that Dame Jenny and others breached their duty as Mainzeal directors in allowing the company to trade recklessly before it collapsed in 2013. RNZ understands senior cabinet ministers have already discussed whether she can remain an executive director of the New Zealand-China Council. The foreign minister told reporters in Fiji he'd been talking about Dame Jenny's incompetence for years. The biosecurity minister Damien O'Connor says restrictions on the movement of fresh produce in and out of contaminated zones will be lifted from this Saturday if no further Queensland fruit flies are found. He says 5 flies in total have been found, and the Ministry of Primary Industries has inspected 300 tonnes of fruit collected from the contaminated zones, all of which are free from larvae. Devonport will be the first to have restrictions lifted this Saturday. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with the news at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. And Madison Reedy has joined us for business. A farm business has announced a big loss today.
This is PGG Wrights, and it's a rural services business, and it's listed on the New Zealand Stock Exchange. Now, this is one of the worst results that we have seen in this half-year reporting period yet. Their net profit for the half-year has all but disappeared. Their half-year net profit was $320,000, down from $14.6 million on the previous period last year.
A massive dive.
Quite a significant dive there. And that's because they faced higher costs in that period, but also their seeds and grains business had quite a large loss of $8.6 million. Now, that business is actually about to be sold to a Danish seeds company for $421 million. Now, that's still awaiting OAO approval, but the company is pretty confident that that will go ahead. The company also says that they're not alone in facing these headwinds and factors that have impacted their performance. They say that those headwinds are being felt across the rural sector, and they're pretty confident also in the business that will be left over after the sale of their seeds business.
So Genesis Energy has opened its books today.
Pretty positive result, actually. So Genesis Energy, one of the big generation retailers in New Zealand, their half-year net profit was up 78% to $49 million today. And that's because the generation assets, so the Huntly Power Station, hydro and wind power stations across New Zealand, they depreciated less than they did last year. So the loss there narrowed. Their revenue was also up 12% to $1.2 billion for the period, but their expenses were up slightly. So their underlying earnings were pretty flat, just down about 2%. Now, that's because they had to turn on their Huntly Power Station quite a lot at the end of last year. That was when we saw that unprecedented low in power supply in New Zealand, when hydro lakes were low, and there was also a gas storage facility outage. So the Huntly Power Station acts as basically the backup for the electricity market in New Zealand, and it was fired up for a pretty consistent period of time, but it does cost more to run, so it hit their finances ever so slightly.
And any excitement on the market today?
The NZX Top 50 index closed up just 0.5% tonight, so that's 42 points to close at 9,281. Genesis Energy's share price closed up just 1 cent. PGG Wrightson's share price actually didn't change. That's still trading at 53 cents. The New Zealand dollar is buying at 68.9 US cents, 95.9 to the Australian, and 52 British pence. That's all pretty steady, even given that we had some figures today about our trade deficit, which widened to a record level in January.
Thanks, Madison. That's Madison Reedy with your business news. Hollywood superstar Hugh Jackman turned up unannounced at Auckland University of Technology in Manukau this morning, surprising students whose viral video caught his attention last year. The Australian-born star was launching his New Zealand tour, honouring a promise to visit the country to meet the students who found a way to his heart. Last year, the 400-strong Oceania Voices Choir performed This Is Me from Jackman's film The Greatest Showman, and it amassed more than 1.4 million views online. Jackman said he was wowed by the video, and after watching it 10 times, he decided to come and meet them. So this morning, he took the stage with his co-star actress, Keela Settle, who has a Māori mother and a Hawaiian father. Our reporter, Alex Perrottet, and camera operators Nick Monroe and Dan Cook were there.
singing the Grammy Award-winning song This Is Me from The Greatest Showman. These students at AUT's Southern Campus in Manukau feel right at home. Home among the stars, that is. That's Keala Settle singing with them. Legit star power right there. But who's this waiting in the wings? The Greatest Showman himself. It all goes back to this viral video the students posted singing the same song last year. It reached Hugh Jackman and hit him hard.
I chose to come here because I saw a 3-minute 42-second video, which I've now watched probably 10 times, and it just was like a bullet to my heart.
When they woke up this morning, never in their wildest dreams did they expect to be doing this.
I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take.
Singing A Million Dreams with Hugh Jackman on their university campus in the same room. The Hollywood heavyweight chose this stage for his first ever performance in New Zealand. And while the public has to wait until early September to see him live on tour, these students got to access all areas. The man has played a magician, a superhero, a prisoner, but the haka and the performance brought out the romantic, with Keala Settle, who plays the bearded woman Letty Lutz in The Greatest Showman, reduced to tears.
It's an incredibly emotional day. You're right, we've all travelled long journeys to get here. I've been to many, many places. Today is one of the most profound that I will never forget.
Representing the fastest growing population in the country, these students are from the many low decile schools dotted around South Auckland, from families struggling to shine against a backdrop of high youth suicide rates and low incomes. Nathan Ashen says young Pacifica students are set to make a big impression on the country as the years go by, and the AUT program is helping them to find their place and find their voice.
We're pretty much the majority of Auckland, and Auckland is the majority of New Zealand, so we're the majority of the majority. Our success resonates through the whole country.
Rose Samuel says she wants to take what she's learned here to serve her own people as a police officer.
I would like to graduate and become a police officer, but that's just my passion of changing the stereotypes. I want to be able to help the community, inspire them, motivate them to, succeed in life, especially in our community.
And Charm Lavea says, well, Hugh is just charming.
I think there was so much pressure, but at the same time Hugh was reminding us that it was our own song to sing, we sing it as our own. And as we sang it, I think there was a great pride in singing it, more meaning to it.
He's rehearsed and performed the song so many times, but the celebrity says never like this.
I walked in here this morning at about 8:45. The guys were singing, warming up, and I just started to cry. You can't fake heart. You can't fake it. I have learnt stuff being here today. It is my privilege being here today. To sing with those kids is our privilege.
Composer Tuilangi Ingelese Ete flew from Fiji last night to conduct the choir. He arranged the musical scores for Moana, and his own production is set to hit Broadway and Hollywood. But he often works with this choir and wasn't going to miss their surprise when the Wolverine appeared.
They were just blown away. They were just like, oh my gosh, we're singing with a superstar here. So, stargazing and, a bit starstruck as well. So they really brought it. But, Hughes was great. He was hugging every single person in the choir. So I think that relationship he created right in the beginning lifted that energy to another level.
He says the students have plenty of talent, and the Uni Prep and Oceania Leadership Network have given them a massive step up.
It's partially, a lot of these students have come through struggles as well. And I think that the fact that they united together, the songs they're singing, it's a powerful meanings behind it. I think they've been connected to that. But I think with Hugh, for him, it's about relationships, about creating authentic relationships, and you can see that straight away. So he really brought out that true energy that was really inside him, and he just fired right back.
Moved by the energy of the singers, The Greatest Showman was happy to let his guard down when asked about whether The Greatest Showman 2 was in the works.
I heard yesterday rumours of a pitch in Hollywood and now it's in production. That was so quick.
I was like, hey!
Alex, I just want to be very clear. I'm not one of those actors that are into sequels at all. I mean, yes, I did 9 Wolverine movies, but apart from that, no.
Would you return to do a Wolverine with Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool if they paid you twice your asking price?
I know that question came from Ryan, right? No. Ryan, wherever you are, stop. It's enough. I'm not motivated by money, and I'm certainly not motivated by working with you. Okay, so stop.
The Boy from Oz will kick off his Australian tour in August and head back to Aotearoa in September for 2 shows in Auckland. For Checkpoint, Alex Perrottet.
And if you're listening, you should go back and watch that piece by Alex Perrottet, Nick Munro and Dan Cook. At the very least, it will make you smile, might even make you cry. Pakistan says it will respond at the time and place of its choosing after India launched strikes against militants in Pakistani territory. The strikes were the first across the de facto border, which divides Indian-administered Kashmir from Pakistan-administered Kashmir since the 1971 war between the two countries. Tensions between the nuclear-armed neighbours have reignited following an attack on Indian troops in Kashmir earlier this month, which was claimed by Pakistani militants. Here's the BBC's Yojita Limai.
In this mountainous part of Pakistan's northeast, India claims to have hit a militant group. It says its aircraft bombed Jaish-e-Mohammed's largest camp. For the first time since 1971, Indian warplanes entered Pakistani airspace.
I heard a huge explosion and jets flying overhead. In the morning, we saw a big crater and some homes damaged.
But Pakistan's military says there was no damage and no casualties. Its spokesman put out photos saying the jets were forced to drop their payloads hastily and scramble away. It's vowed to retaliate.
India has committed uncalled for aggression, to which Pakistan shall respond at the time and place of its choosing.
India's actions are being seen as a response to the suicide bombing 12 days ago. Carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed, it killed 40 troops in Indian-administered Kashmir. This is an area disputed between Pakistan and India. The neighbours have fought 2 wars over it, and for decades it's faced armed insurgency backed by Pakistan-based groups.
India has been repeatedly urging Pakistan to take action against the Jaish-e-Mohammed to prevent jihadis from being trained and armed inside Pakistan.
After the suicide bombing, the mood in the country was one of anger, of wanting revenge against the perpetrators. And with a national election coming up in less than 2 months from now, the government and Prime Minister Modi were under pressure to act. Along the de facto border between the two countries, troops are on high alert. Reports say both sides have been firing small arms and mortars. In what is already one of the most militarized regions in the world, there is fear about how much worse it could get.
And that was the BBC's Yojita Limai, who was reporting there from Mumbai. It is about 12 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Do get in contact with your feedback. If you want to talk about anything you've heard on the show today, you can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or send us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. What would you do if your husband, brother, uncle or father disappeared without a trace? That's the situation for Sarah Norton, the sister of one of the Kiwi passengers on board MH370, which disappeared nearly 5 years ago now. It's one of the greatest aviation mysteries of all time, and the families of those lost are still desperately seeking answers. Our South Island reporter Logan Church and camera operator Simon Rogers filed this report.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines plane is missing.
The Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans.
MH370 disappeared en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing on the 8th of March 2014. It was carrying 239 people, including Paul Weeks, one of 2 New Zealanders on board. His sister, Sarah, remembers the brother she's lost.
Cheeky, funny, kind of very much a leader, just a very nice person. So he went to uni, he got a mechanical engineering degree, they moved to Perth, he was doing some work over there, and then he was employed by a mine in Mongolia. They wanted him to go and basically reorganise the whole place and restructure it and get it running efficiently. So that's where he was headed to the day he disappeared.
Paul Weeks is survived by his wife Danica and his 2 boys Lincoln and Jack. He was born in Christchurch but moved with his family to Perth after the Canterbury earthquakes. Sarah recalls the nights they learnt he was missing.
Well, I guess we presumed initially that it had crashed, that something had gone wrong. I mean, we weren't notified by anyone else. It was a person from the media that rang my grandfather, and that's how we found out. So we just presumed that obviously it had crashed or something, like that, and that over the following few days we would find out what had happened.
Where is your grandfather?
So my grandfather lives in Christchurch, and with my grandmother. And
so he got a call from a journalist with the news?
He got a call from a reporter, yeah. So I don't know how the reporter tracked him down. He has a different surname, but that's how we found out.
Those first few months after the crash, did you hold hope that something would be found?
Absolutely. Initially, when the information was so conflicting and there was nothing that was firm, we thought perhaps maybe it had landed, or perhaps it had been hijacked, or maybe it had crashed somewhere else. So many things go through your mind because you haven't got any firm information, and then it's just kept going. It's nearly 5 years of did it crash, did it land, was it hijacked, was it the pilot, is everyone somewhere else, did they land and get kept somewhere, did they crash, are they in the southern Indian Ocean, are they in another ocean, is it, question, we don't know.
MH370 had 227 passengers on board, including 2 children and 12 crew members. Its disappearance has become the biggest mystery in aviation history. Unanswered questions have given rise to multiple theories, but for the families they need facts. And Sarah says communication from the Malaysian government has been far from ideal.
So initially the families were allocated a person from in Malaysia somewhere who would ring or email. And that lasted for a few weeks, and then it got very, very sporadic, and then we received a text message from someone in Malaysia saying that everyone was dead.
So you got a text message saying...
A text message, yes. That was everyone, that was Danica. So Danica and myself were contacts for Paul, because I was in New Zealand and she was the Australian contact, and that's how we received that information. No, they're very difficult to deal with and have been the whole way through, and I'm not sure whether that's a culture issue, whether it's just their manner, but you would imagine, given what had happened, that they would want to be friendly and polite to people who are grieving, and they certainly weren't.
A search costing up to $200 million has failed to find the plane, and most crucially, its flight recorder. Only that will confirm what actually happened to the doomed flight. Sarah says she's very surprised they haven't had any word from the New Zealand government or the Defence Force.
I did find that a little bit disappointing, given that I am in New Zealand and my brother is a New Zealander. But no one's ever contacted me, and he represented our country in the army also at a point during his life. So you would think someone would want to have said something, perhaps at the time, but no.
How long did he serve in the army?
I believe he was in the army for about 7 years.
And what did he do?
He was a mechanic. Yep. Yeah.
Fantastic.
He loved tinkering away on vehicles. So
he served for 7 years, and nothing from the New Zealand government in terms of help for you or your family?
No, we've never heard from them.
We contacted the Ministry of Foreign Affairs about this. In a statement, it said,
"The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade provided consular assistance to the family of Mr Weeks following the disappearance of MH370. It is not our policy to provide details of individual cases."
And the Defence Force.
The New Zealand Defence Force has great sympathy for the family of Paul Weeks and for the families of all those lost on MH370. A P-3 Orion aircraft and around 40 personnel were involved in the search for MH370 for around 50 days, spending 284 hours in the air. It became a deeply personal mission for the crews involved. Mr Weeks served in the New Zealand Army from October 1993 and left in January 1999. Our thoughts and condolences are with his family.
As the 5th anniversary of the plane's disappearance nears, the victims' families are still no closer to finding any answers. Danica, Paul's wife, managed to get life insurance paid out, but Sarah says what the families really want is closure and assurances that a similar disaster can never happen again.
If it can happen to that plane, and that plane can suddenly go missing and no one knows where it is, and that's it, end of plane, end of 230 odd people, then what's to stop it happening to another plane? One that I might be on, or one that you might be on, one that my children could be on, someone else's children. And I find that really interesting that no one seems to be concerned about that. People need to remember that there are no definitive answers with regard to this plane. We get a lot of, what's the word I'm going to use, a lot of stick from people.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
We should be over it. Over it. They found some parts, the plane crashed, so we know what happened. I'm not entirely convinced that if that was their loved one on the plane that they'd be over it. But that's a lot of the feedback that has come from some people. And on the flip side, there are a lot of people who are very, very lovely, but just that, 5 years down the track, why aren't we over it? We know it crashed, end of story. We don't know it crashed.
But closure of any kind is a long way away. Sarah says Danica and some of the other families are travelling to Kuala Lumpur ahead of the 5-year anniversary, in the hope of getting some answers and to get another search going. For them, the fight is not over.
It's a very hard battle to fight. And yeah, it's just, like you said, it's just endless. Year in, year out, no more information, no nothing, no Paul.
And that's Sarah Norton ending that report from Logan Church and Simon Rogers. The spotlight is on the Vietnamese capital of Hanoi, where the second high-stakes summit between the US President Donald Trump and North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un is due to get underway in earnest tomorrow. After last year's historic meeting, Donald Trump will likely be looking for more than just warm words from Kim on denuclearisation this time. Here's the BBC's Laura Bicker.
After a marathon 3-day train trip through China, the North Korean leader looks ready to enjoy the limelight. Some of his staff even struggle to keep up. Kim Jong-un may run an impoverished country, but he is determined to put on a show of strength on the streets of Hanoi. Donald Trump also has a lot to prove in Vietnam. Very little of substance was agreed at their last meeting. North Korea remains a global threat. This time, he'll hope to have an offer Mr. Kim won't refuse. Vietnam is seen as a model North Korea could use to reform. It remains a communist state. The party retains absolute control. Yet it opened up its economy to become one of the fastest growing in Asia. Dang Thi Tan took the chance to establish her own textile business using traditional Vietnamese methods. She employs dozens of staff, and after 24 years, her firm is now global.
If I give the advice to North Korea people, you need to keep working very skillful thing. You have to make something that special only in your place, and you also need to learn the international market.
Oh my God, here is so fancy market.
Most North Korean households have been making money on the black market for years. Here in Seoul in South Korea, one defector told me it's tolerated but still illegal. It's the only way some families earn money for food. and she's not sure Kim Jong-un is serious about economic reform.
I'm worried about just one thing, Kim Jong-un showing he's good leader, and I am developing Pyongyang like fancy countries, higher building. That is, I think that is not North Korea, that is not North Korea.
These Hanoi school children are singing about their hopes for the summit. They come from a country which has made peace with the US and gained prosperity. Could North Korea's next generation learn a similar lesson?
And that was the BBC's Laura Bicker reporting from Hanoi there. Just a few seconds to read out some of your feedback. Alex Perrottet did a story earlier in the show about Hugh Jackman visiting a school in South Auckland where he sang with the choir, Oceania Voices Choir. This from M made me cry. You should go online and check it out. It's a great piece.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata tēnei. 81 houses were evacuated in Redwood Valley near Nelson after another fire broke out this afternoon. The fire was reported to emergency services about 1:15 and grew rapidly to cover 7 hectares. 16 fire trucks and 3 helicopters battled the fire, which has now been contained. The blaze prompted evacuations on a section of the Moutere Highway, including residents who had just returned after being forced to leave in the recent Pigeon Valley fire. Fire Incident Controller Robin Thompson says those people now may not have to stay away from their homes overnight.
We had 16 appliances and tankers there initially, and crews from the other fire and our volunteers to be turning out. So yeah, we got onto it pretty quick, which was good, and managed to pull it up.
Robin Thompson says fire crews will monitor the fire overnight. The family of the man who took his own life after walking out of a mental health unit says it's only fair Waikato DHB pays their legal fees after it challenged the coroner's findings. Nikki Stevens, who was 21 years old, walked out of the Waikato District Health Board mental health unit in March 2015. His body was found in the Waikato River 3 days later. Coroner Wallace Bain ruled late last year that the death was a preventable suicide, but the DHB has challenged the findings, citing procedural problems. At a meeting today, Mr Stevens' parents, Jane Stevens and Dave McPherson, told the board there has been an immense financial and emotional toll and a new inquest would be devastating.
You know, they've got taxpayer money and insurance company money to pay these QCs and lawyers to actually run their cases for them, and for however long it takes. We just don't have that, and it's not fair. They need to realise the impact of this.
Jane Stevens. The Prime Minister is refusing to express a view on the decision to block John Tamahere from renewing his Labour Party membership, saying it's a matter for the party. Mr Tamahere says the decision's aimed at undermining his bid for the Auckland mayoralty. Phil Goff, the current mayor, has Labour's endorsement and is likely to run again. Mr Tamahere has a controversial history with the party but is threatening to appeal against the decision. Labour's president, Nigel Horwath, has declined to state a reason, saying he doesn't comment on individual cases. Speaking in Hamilton, Jacinda Ardern also had little to say.
That's ultimately a question for New Zealand Council. It's not something I'm involved with at all. They're the ones that consider applications to rejoin the party, and that's what they've done here, but it's not something I've been involved with.
The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern. The sister of a man on lost flight MH370 still wants answers as to why the plane went missing. The Malaysian Airlines flight disappeared without a trace on the 8th of March 2014 en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. An international search effort costing millions of dollars turned up no meaningful discoveries, making it one of the biggest aviation mysteries of all time. It was carrying 239 people, including Paul Weeks, one of 2 New Zealanders on board. Ahead of the 5-year anniversary of the disappearance, Mr Weeks' sister, Sarah Norton, has told Checkpoint her family is still waiting for answers. Ms Norton says she hasn't heard from the Malaysian government in years, which she says is unacceptable. She says her family needs closure. The AA says a lot of people living in rural Auckland are going to be shocked and frustrated if speed limits are reduced from 100 kilometres per hour to 60. Public consultation begins tomorrow on plans to cut the speed in some town centres to 30 kilometres an hour and some rural roads to 60 kilometres an hour. Auckland Transport says global and local research shows that cutting speeds saves lives. But Barney Irvine from the AA says a lot of the rural roads are low risk and the whole situation would confuse locals.
Certainly the feedback we've had from our members in rural parts of the city and in our surveys is that the proposed speeds are going to be well below what they see as safe and appropriate for those roads.
Barney Irvine from the AA. Australia's disgraced Catholic Cardinal George Pell will spend his first night in prison tonight after a judge remanded him in custody for sentencing on March 13th. Pell has been attending a pre-sentencing hearing after being convicted of sexually abusing 2 choir boys while he was the Archbishop of Melbourne in 1996. Here's the BBC's Simon Atkinson.
In a packed courtroom, the trial judge said George Pell's attacks had been callous, brazen and blatant, carried out by a man who clearly thought he could get away with it. And just a day after his conviction was made public, Pell was warned he was likely to face several years in prison. The 77-year-old received a volley of insults from abuse survivors as he arrived for the hearing. The court heard that former Australian Prime Minister John Howard is among those who've given character references for the country's most high-profile Catholic.
Simon Atkinson in Melbourne. It's 6:05. Despite having risen to their highest test ranking, the Black Caps aren't focused on maintaining it ahead of their test series against Bangladesh starting in Hamilton tomorrow. New Zealand slipped past South Africa into second spot recently after the Proteas surprise series loss to Sri Lanka. India remained the #1 test ranked side. Bangladesh sit a low 7th, but Black Caps skipper Kane Williamson says winning the test series is the focus.
You turn up to every game, prepare as well as you can to play the best cricket you can, and it pretty much ends there. And what happens afterwards in terms of results and people's view on rankings and all these sorts of things aren't really focuses for us.
Kane Williamson. The bargaining position of Warriors hooker Isaac Luke appears to have got a lot stronger. The Parramatta Eels hooker Kaiser Pritchard has been given time off by the club to consider his future in the game as he contends with ongoing injury problems. 2 weeks out from the start of the NRL season, Pritchard's unavailability leaves the Eels with just one recognised hooker. The Eels are reportedly trying to lure Luke away from the Warriors, where he's on a cut price deal, but the Auckland club says they are in the process of offering him an upgraded contract. The New Zealand squash players Joel King and Paul Cole are both through to the quarterfinals of the World Champs in Chicago, and the Wellington Phoenix midfielder Alex Rufer has signed on for another year as the club looks to lock down more key players heading towards the end of the season. That's the news.
Shots fired in Christchurch.
Firing guns and popping up, like hiding behind trees, and there was like a smashed car and then a guy on the ground and then the cops all over him.
Landslips shrugged off at Cape Kidnappers.
Walk out of the way, or sometimes you might have to run out of the way. I've been under a huge one myself and actually cleared it quite easily.
And reservations on Air New Zealand.
I've been mandated as the champion of the regions in the broad search for inclusiveness and prosperity across all New Zealand, and I'm not keeping quiet.
Turn up the dial. Morning Report, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, with nearly 10% of babies born premature in New Zealand, what can be done to help their brain development? And after 10, the Kiwi lawyer at the centre of international efforts to clean up world sport. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather to midnight tomorrow. For Northland to Waikato, mainly fine, isolated showers tomorrow morning. Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Taupo, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine weather. Waitomo, Taumaranui and Taihape, mainly fine, isolated showers overnight tonight. Taranaki to Kapiti, cloudy periods with isolated light showers, becoming fine tomorrow morning. Wellington and Wairarapa, cloudy periods, a few showers developing overnight tonight, then becoming fine during tomorrow morning. Marlborough and Nelson, high cloud increasing, a few showers about western Nelson and the Kaikoura coast this evening, fine tomorrow. Westland and Buller, rain in Westland spreading north this afternoon. Heavy for a time with thunderstorms possible, then easing this evening, fine tomorrow. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, also Fiordland. Showers with hail and isolated thunderstorms possible, easing tonight. Showers becoming confined to the south coast tomorrow morning and becoming fine elsewhere. Chatham Islands, cloudy periods of rain tomorrow. It's coming up to 9 minutes past 6 and you're with RNZ National.
Thanks, Susanna. I'm Lisa Owen and you're listening to Checkpoint. 16 fire trucks and support vehicles along with 7 helicopters are tonight fighting a new fire in Tasman's Redwood Valley. Residents have been evacuated and others are on notice as the fire burns through around 7 hectares of exotic pine and grass about 300 metres off the Motiri Highway. But whilst winds are expected to pick up tonight, crews are confident the fire has been stopped at the grass at the foot of the gully where it began. Philippa Foslam lives on Maisie Road. I spoke to her as she prepared to evacuate and she told me she is terrified of fire.
I was in behind our garage and I've got a very strong nose when it comes to smoke because I'm petrified of fire. And I thought, I can smell smoke. I thought, no, surely not. And then I heard a helicopter and my heart just went up into my throat. I thought, oh no. And so I rushed inside and said to John, I think I can smell smoke. And then I ran back out to our driveway, which looks across towards the end of Maisie Road, really, or just the other side, towards Gallio, sort of over that way. And I could see smoke, so I rushed in and rang the fire watch, and he confirmed that it was a fire on Moutere Hill and that we were okay at the moment. I instantly thought, oh my God. So we just dived, or I just dived to it basically, and got all our stuff together. We'd only just unpacked because we were put on prepare to evacuate on Tuesday the 5th, and we'd only actually just unpacked on Monday. So I had to quickly think, oh my God, what do we need? And so basically, luckily we hadn't put all our important documents away. They were still in the spare room, so we grabbed those. Also had to get our young chooks again, and that was a performance, but we did. Got the bunny in a bird cage. Unfortunately, we've got domestic ducks that can't fly, so they're probably going to die if anything happens. But
oh, that's terrible. Hey, so this really scares you. I can hear it in your voice.
If I'm honest, I really haven't relaxed since. I sort of had moments this week when I wasn't thinking about the fire. But it's weird. I had a funny feeling today when that wind started up. I just had a gut feeling, and the same thing happened before the other fire. I woke up in the middle of the night on the Monday, and I just knew something bad was going to happen. I don't know why or how.
So this is an ongoing thing for you, just this on edge.
It is. Yeah, it is. I've been on edge for 3 weeks, basically, and now I'm even worse.
How close is this to you, Philippa?
Sorry?
How close is this to you?
Well, we're near the coastal highway end of Maisie Road, but neighbours about, I'm not sure how many metres up the road, have already been told by the police to evacuate. So we're just, basically we've got everything packed. We're ready to put the animals in the car and go the minute the police turn up. So
nobody's knocked on your door yet?
No, they haven't. We're waiting for it though. I don't think it'll be long somehow.
Do you think...
Sorry, I just need some water. It's quite smoky, and there's a lot of helicopter action. I can hear a lot of helicopter action, which is fantastic. Thank God for them. But, I never dreamt in my life that I would ever be in this situation. The drought is actually bad enough without this as well.
Yeah, and you think that if you have to go, you'll have to leave some of your animals behind, you were saying?
Yeah, we do. We've got big domestic ducks, and they just can't fly. And we've also got a very geriatric one who's deaf and blind in a pen, so I'm just going to have to let him go and hope. I just can't take them with us because we can't take everything.
Do you think you might go before the police knock on your door?
It's in my mind. It is in my mind to go, but I'd rather not unless I absolutely have to because this place is very precious, and I've got a perennial nursery. I've got all my plants here, and they're all my children, really. So
yeah.
But obviously, the minute the police come up the drive, we'll be out of here at 100 miles, not 100 miles an hour, at 80 kilometres an hour.
I understand. Who's in your family? Who stays in the house that would have to get out with you?
Just my husband, John, and we've got a dog and a cat, 3 chickens and a rabbit, who are in the bedroom at the moment, petrified out of their wits.
Yeah, because can they smell the smoke, sense something's not right?
Yeah, they can sense something's not right. Yeah, and so can our dog, and he's got epilepsy, so hopefully he won't have an epileptic fit after this. But yeah, like the wind isn't easing back. It's getting. I don't know if you can hear it through the phone. It's actually getting stronger.
Yeah, I can hear it. So you've walked outside?
Yeah, I've walked outside. You'll be able to hear the helicopters as well.
What can you see when you look skyward? You say, I can hear the slight buzz of wind or helicopter there. What are you looking at?
I'm basically looking at blue sky with a bit of cloud and smoke in the distance. So I can still see smoke. Occasionally it wafts over our place. Hang on, I can go a bit further because this phone goes quite a long way.
And so the choppers are flying with the monsoon buckets, are they?
Yeah, they are. Hang on a minute. Are they flying with the monsoon buckets, John? Can you see any monsoon buckets or anything? You can't see them. Yeah, they are. They're carrying them across, going over the back of Gallio Estate. So they must be dumping them somewhere up there. They've definitely got monsoon buckets.
So, as far as you know, some of your neighbours have had to go already on the move?
Yeah, they have. Yep. Just about a quarter of an hour ago, one that's probably in the middle of Maisie Road was told to evacuate. Yeah. That's right. John's just taking a photo. That you can see there's a helicopter quite close, actually.
Yeah, I can hear the blades going there. I can hear the chopper. So for you guys, wow, it's been never ending, it seems.
It has been, and until we get significant rain, I think everybody's going to be on edge now. I don't know when I'm going to sleep again.
And our producer has spoken to Philippa in the last few minutes, and she's still at home, but she's ready to leave at short notice if the police do come knocking. Rainfall levels in Nelson have been significantly below average for the last 2 months, putting the region on track for its driest start to the year on record. Joining us now with details is Met Service meteorologist Tui McInnes. Hi Tui, how bad has it been in that area?
It's been, as we can all tell, it's been very, very dry at the moment. It's pretty safe to say that we're heading towards breaking a record for the driest January and February on record. So far, January and February, we've recorded 10.8 mils of rain at Nelson Airport for the 2 months up till today, and the previous driest January-February period was 23 mils. So we're quite a bit under that previous record.
Yeah, less than half of the previous record. So what about, what's the prospects over the next while in terms of rain?
Unfortunately, Nelson's set to stay dry for basically the foreseeable short to medium term future. There's a bit of a weak front that's moving up the South Island as we speak. But the problem is it's getting weakened under this ridge of high pressure that's been sitting up over the North Island, which means that by the time it reaches Nelson, it's weakened sufficiently that it can't produce enough rainfall to spill over the sort of Tasman Mountains. And that's what we're seeing today. There's the risk of maybe a brief shower, but brief and light is kind of all that we're expecting. Once that front passes, the ridge is actually just a bit further south, so more over the South Island, and that just persists. And because of that, any fronts that come anywhere in New Zealand get quickly brushed away, keeping everything dry, which unfortunately at the moment is not what we want to hear.
They're not having any luck, are they? What about the wind tonight? Particularly, we're interested because of obviously the fire in the Redwood Valley. What are winds looking like?
So we'd expect the winds to die down this evening, just as they normally do with diurnal variation. The sun goes down, cools things down, you get a bit of friction close to the surface, and that tends to ease the winds off. But we do have these southwesterlies coming through, southwesterlies being quite sort of a potent wind direction for now, since where they get the really, really strong winds, which you could sort of hear about just before. So we still expect those gusty southwesterlies to stick up a bit. This is kind of actually the only weather that we're getting from this front, unfortunately, is the winds, which are set to stick around. But as we go into tomorrow, it should lighten things off. They'll get a bit of a sea breeze, but that sort of doesn't really help things in regards to the rain or any of the other sort of weather that people in Nelson would be hoping for.
Yeah, bad news. The bearer of bad news, Tui. That's Tui McInnes, who is with the Met Service there. They're on record in the Nelson area to have one of its, driest starts to the year on record. The Crown has told a court it's almost inconceivable that two strangers would have alleged the same police officer sexually assaulted them in a similar way if the allegations weren't true. Detective Inspector Kevin Burke pleaded not guilty to 2 charges of indecent assault and 2 of unlawful sexual connection relating to 2 women he met in the course of his job. Jordan Bond reports from the High Court in Auckland.
In her closing arguments to the jury, Crown Prosecutor Jo Murdoch asked them to use their logic and reason. She outlined how 2 women, independent of one another, made detailed allegations about Kevin Burke. They said he abused the trust they'd put in him as a police officer and sexually assaulted them in their own homes.
The Crown says that there are striking similarities in this case that would make it an implausible coincidence if both women happened to be lying about what the defendant did to them.
Ms Murdoch said both women lived with what happened for many years, but could now recount the events in graphic detail. She said the women felt they couldn't report it straight away.
He was a police officer. Who was going to believe them? She wasn't going to call police on the night of the 17th to report to police what a police officer had just done to her. You remember her evidence about that? He was the police.
In his closing argument, defence lawyer Arthur Fairley said the women's stories weren't credible. He claimed the Crown ignored information that didn't suit its case, and the two women emailed each other a dozen times before the trial. Mr Fairley told the jury one of them lied about a previous relationship and her interest in men at the time.
Because that, I submit to you, goes to the fundamental heart of her credibility. The fundamental heart of her story she's trying to put across to you. So why would she do that? Because we know it's a lie. It's a beating lie in the heart of her credibility. For goodness sake, members of the jury, a quarter would concede that.
Mr Fairley said the second complainant told the police Mr Burke had a tattoo on his right shoulder, but Mr Burke testified that he has never had any tattoo. Mr Fairley urged the jury not to listen to the appeals to the heart, but to consider the evidence they'd heard over the last 2.5 weeks in a logical way.
Has there been any inconsistency? Who has been consistent throughout? The Crown trying to make great play that Mr Burke has changed his testimony. They put that to him, the question. He denied that. He has not changed his testimony one iota from day one, unlike the two other players.
Justice Sarah Katz will sum up the case tomorrow morning before the jury retires to deliberate. Mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Jordan Bond, tēnei.
More than 2.5 years after Britain voted to leave the European Union, the British Prime Minister has for the first time raised the prospect of delaying Brexit. Theresa May says she will give MPs a vote on delaying the UK's departure from the European Union or ruling out a no-deal Brexit if they reject her deal next month. The ABC's Samantha Hawley has more from Westminster.
The UK Parliament, tasked with delivering a complicated and rather messy divorce, can't seem to figure out the way out. And the final split is only 31 days away.
Now, I've been clear throughout the process that my aim is to bring the country back together. This House...
The Prime Minister, Theresa May, is leading a divided country, party and Parliament.
There are commitments I am making as Prime Minister, and I will stick by them as I have previous commitments.
With internal party division brewing, she opened the way to ensuring the UK doesn't leave the EU without a deal. She's pledged a second meaningful vote will take place no later than the 12th of March. If it fails, a day later the House of Commons will vote on whether the UK should leave the European bloc with no deal. If the answer to that is no, the Parliament will vote on whether to delay Brexit until the end of June.
But let me be clear. I do not want to see Article 50 extended. Our absolute focus should be on working to get a deal and leaving on the 29th of March.
I've lost count of the number of times the Prime Minister has come to this House to explain a further delay.
The Labour opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn insists Theresa May is wasting time to force MPs into voting for her deal.
The Prime Minister has become quite the expert at kicking the can down the road. But the problem is the road is running out.
But Jeremy Corbyn is in a bind too, stuck in the middle of a damaging anti-Semitism crisis in his own party. He lost 9 of his own MPs to an independent party last week. In his own backdown, he's committed Labour to supporting a second referendum if he can't get a Brexit deal he wants. But there's no certainty that would get the support needed in the House of Commons.
The responsibility for this lies exclusively with the Prime Minister and her government's shambolic handling of Brexit.
And that was British Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn ending Samantha Hawley's report. It's a war of words as well as fares since Air New Zealand slashed some of its domestic ticket prices. Budget carrier Jetstar has hit back, reminding travellers of its guarantee to beat cheaper comparable fares by 10%, while also claiming to be top of the leaderboard in terms of reliability. I asked Jetstar's Ingrid Just what else Jetstar can bring to this dogfight.
We've had low fares in the market for a decade. For example, we're currently offering domestic fares for under $50, including Wellington Nelson from $29 one way, Auckland New Plymouth for $32 one way, Auckland Wellington from $39 one way. These are the sorts of everyday low fares that we've had in the market for 10 years. But not only that, we also offer a price beat guarantee. So we'll beat the price on the same route at the same time by 10%. So,
OK, that's interesting. So that's your normal guarantee and you're standing by it, obviously. How
correct.
Often have you had to pay up on that guarantee on our domestic routes?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have to say not very often, because the sorts of fares that I've just mentioned to you now have been in market since we joined the domestic routes 10 years ago, and we're committed to being the low fares leader. That's what we have been. We've shaken up the landscape. More New Zealanders and also travellers into the country from outside have been able to explore the North and South Island really reasonably. It means that people can, see their grandma for their birthday, or follow their passions, cycling or surfing, where previously they may not have been able to do that. But now...
So do you think Air New Zealand, as you say, you've been in the market for 10 years, and Air New Zealand is, only now making sweeping changes on its domestic routes. So have you forced their hands, or has something else forced their hands? Because it's been 10 years.
That's a question for them.
What do you think, though? Because obviously you would keep a close eye on the market, you'd keep a close eye on your competitor. What do you reckon's going on?
Look, it really is a question for them. We have been offering these sorts of fares for 10 years. I've just described some examples, and that's not recent. That's not just now, but for the last decade. So millions of domestic fares for under $100, for under $50 as well. So we're just going to keep on being the low fares leader in the market and keep on doing what we're doing. We play our own game, and New Zealanders have been loving it.
Ingrid, yes, you do offer cheap fares, but I suppose the difference here is that Air New Zealand does fly to more locations, right? So do you think that the real battleground is going to be those areas where you're sharing routes, where you're both flying to those same destinations? And can you sustain a head-to-head competition on those routes?
Well, I like your point, because I can come back and say that we'll beat the price on the same route and time by 10%. So we will always be the low-cost leader in New Zealand.
Is there any prospect that you may expand your routes?
We're always looking at new destinations where there's demand. Absolutely, that is part of our network planning. That's part of our strategy. Not only that, but we have the best record for on-time performance, over 80% on-time domestic performance in the last year. We're the number one. We're at the top of the leaderboard. So great.
Where does Air New Zealand fit on that on-time leaderboard, Ingrid? Where are they if you're at the top?
If we're number one, they're definitely behind us. You'll have to ask them.
Does Jetstar still have image issues around delays and cancellations? Because you did have a problem with it.
Look, it's a really good point. When we started off, 10 years ago, we certainly had some work to do, and we've worked really hard. We've got more than 500 team members all around the country that have worked really hard in our aircraft turnaround times. And it's evidenced, that hard work is evidenced by the great result that I just mentioned, top of the leaderboard when it comes to OTP for last year. And
that means
customer satisfaction scores are among the highest across our whole international network.
In terms of that on-time performance, you said, I think it was 80% of the time you're on time, is that right?
That's right.
Was that the figure?
Yep.
So what about the other 20% of the time where people are sitting on the tarmac, wringing their hands, or their flight is cancelled? Because there was a situation just in the media right today about a couple who were hoping to fly to an Eagles concert on a Jetstar airline that was cancelled about 5 hours before it took off.
Yeah, look, that was obviously a frustrating situation for our customers. It was certainly as a result of a number of things, including weather. Cancellation rates are very low in our jet operations. They're only at about 1%. A little bit high in our regional operations, but that's because they're largely weather affected.
And that was Ingrid Just from Jetstar there talking about the price reduction. Let's go to some of your feedback just before we head off for the evening. This on Lime. Nita Blake-Person spoke to some of the people injured by the Lime braking fault. And you've got in touch. It's fairly obvious, this person says, that Lime does not give a toss about anything other than making a fast buck out of Kiwis, and dumb, naive Kiwis have obliged. And David from Caddy Caddy Beach says, it seems that Lime could be using New Zealand as a test bed. Perhaps they are aware of our no-fault ACC scheme, which precludes any injured persons from suing them. And David is musing over the fact, or wondering whether it's possible to take a negligence case. And on speed limits, the prospect of cutting speed limits in Auckland City, most people don't keep to the speed limit, this person says, so cutting the limits won't make any difference anyway. Hey, thank you so much for joining us this evening on Checkpoint. That is all we have got time for. Don't forget, you can check out all our visual stories online and catch up with the up-to-date news there.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. 81 houses are evacuated in Nelson's Redwood Valley after another blaze engulfs 5 hectares of pine forest. The family of a man who committed suicide is asking the Waikato DHB to pay their legal fees after it challenged the coroner's findings. Jacinda Ardern is refusing comment on the Labour Party's refusal to renew John Tamahere's membership. And Australia's disgraced Cardinal George Pell is in prison tonight after being remanded for sentencing on March 13th. Those are the headlines. Our next news will be at 7.
It's Willie Nelson as you've never heard it before. Tonight on Inside Out, Pat Bianchi gives us his take on the red-headed Strangers tune Crazy.